All right, everyone. Welcome to 52 Living Ideas. Today is Meditation Tuesday, and today we will go over the first half, or part one, not necessarily the first half, but we'll go over part one of week one of the course, Demystifying Mindfulness. So the schedule for today is that I'll share on one of the ideas found in the first week of that course for around 15 minutes. And then we'll go to a Q&A followed by a poem reading and then into meditation. And from there, we'll do takeaways and then breakout rooms tonight. So I will jump right into it in just one moment. Okay. So this week really serves as an introduction to mindfulness and really asks us to challenge our preconceptions and ideas that we bring to the table on mindfulness. And so what I'll focus on today is the idea of the Buddhist monk or a sage. So in the beginning of the course, the instructor introduces, I'm not going to talk about all of these, but he introduces like the warrior, the ninja, the scientist, the sage or the monk, and the hippie. And all of these kind of just serve as images of what we might believe to be true about mindfulness or meditation. And so when we think of the sage or the monk, I think that the common idea, which isn't wrong in any way, but is that it's a spiritual model. It's a person or it's a person or a figure that isn't living in the material and the physical world that we are, or their presence isn't, their focus isn't in the material world that we live in. And they give more focus to the present moment, less focus on technical skills, and they even think the idea of, or the common belief is that like they even think that we're focusing on the wrong thing, and that true meaning comes from focusing on focusing inwardly and knowing ourselves and having and personal growth. And even he goes so far as to say that material success is trivial to the Buddhist monk or the sage. And one thing I was thinking about when going through this course and when considering this topic was that on my on one of my first meditation retreats, I've gone on several longer 10-day Vipassana retreats. And sometimes, actually not even on my first, but oftentimes when I return and I'll share with people about my experience, or just in general when people ask me about it, there's often some pushback about that the person hasn't done one because they don't see how it's relevant to their everyday life, because we don't sit in meditation all day. We don't have that. We don't do that because we have other commitments and other things to attend to. So I often get that as pushback. And I think my response to that would be that what you go on retreat for, or the reason of meditating, is so that you can learn things in your meditation or on your retreat that you can then bring back, to your life that will help you. So in looking at the sage or the monk, if we can reframe the idea as not something that's unattainable and therefore we shouldn't even try. And instead of just seeing it as, this being has these attributes and these traits that we can adopt and help us, then that should propel our meditation instead of pushing it away. And I liked too that this instructor, he talks about that a bit, about how all of these preconceptions and these ideas and these labels and attachments that we put on to a meditation practice or mindfulness, that all of them can be seen as they can either attract us to meditation or they can take us away from it. And it depends on what we as individuals bring to the table and what we kind of like see in that. So for example, when he gets into the 3 preconceptions of a monk, the 3 preconceptions he gives for a monk is the problem of Orientalism, the problem of secularism, and the problem of what he calls trappings. And so all of these things, and I'll go over just briefly what their definition or how he defines them in a moment. All of these ideas can either pull someone to, it's either attracting someone to the practice or it's taking them away. And I think that is also a good way or a good insight into what we're actually trying to understand with the practice, is that with all of these ideas that we have about the world, about ourselves, about how things should be, that they're only good or bad, positive or negative, because of what we bring to them. It's what we think about them. It's our own experience that we're projecting onto these things that are actually neither good or bad. So when he talks about the problem of Orientalism, he defines it as the belief that meditation isn't relevant to the West. So I think it kind of goes back to what I experience sometimes when I talk to people who are interested in longer courses, that there's like a struggle to see how you can bring that back to your everyday life in the Western world, in our culture. And I actually will say that I think that there's definitely hurdles to it, because we don't live in a culture in the West that supports meditation and supports that practice, whereas maybe not like globally, in the sense that, not all over the East or Asia does every cultural pocket there support meditation, but I would say that there's more opportunities and there's more of an openness in those cultures to embrace those who are interested in it. And so I think just in terms of in the West, and like keeping up with your practice and talking about it and finding a community, these can all be hurdles that take place here. And then the next one was the problem of secularism. So he talks about this as a belief that that the practice actually isn't secular, and that it is indeed religious and or spiritual. So that too in itself can either attract or deflect people from the practice, because maybe someone comes to it and they're actually excited about the spiritual aspect. Maybe that's what they're seeking. And maybe someone comes to it and they see it as religious, and they're not, they already are, rooted in a religion, or they're not interested, they're atheist or agnostic, and so they're not interested in or they think that something will be taken from them if they partake in something that they believe is a religion. So again, it can either, you know, help or it can push you further away. And then the problem of trappings, I think this one we've talked about in this group a lot, which really it just comes down to that there isn't one way to properly meditate, and that it's different for every person. And I think that when we see the Buddhist monk, the image that we think of there is someone, you know, is the Buddha sitting, or any Buddhas. There were many Buddhas. It's just the most common one we kind of like talk about is Siddhartha. But, you know, when we think of a Buddha, we think of them sitting in generally like the lotus posture with their hands folded, their like back erect, and they're meditating. But, you know, you can do a walking meditation, you can do a laying down meditation, and sometimes if, you know, you could be meditating like, or being mindful throughout your day. And I think that the image of the Buddha as well in itself, sitting in, like many, I think, religious symbols, having like the Buddha sitting in this position is in itself misleading, because in actuality, the Buddha was a very active person. The Buddha was like out in the community, like teaching people, talking to people, giving Dharma talks, and he was actually very active. So I think that a more accurate depiction of the Buddha would be like of a person like up and like walking, you know, and kind of like being an active participant. And I think it's also interesting to think about, if that was the vision of, or if that was the depiction of the Buddha, how would that change how we view meditation? If now the symbol of meditation was this like active person, you know, and like how does that change? Because now meditation isn't just an activity that you do when you're sitting down, but it's something that you carry through to the rest of your life, and then that can become like more widely accepted just by changing that image slightly. So then one thing I before I wrap up here, are the last thing that I wanted to touch on that I thought was a great note for intro to mindfulness, is that this group has talked a lot about what is mindfulness? Like, how do we define it? And I think that in exploring this course, that it was the definition, or not the definition, but the way he pitched it was that it depends on like who you're talking to and like how they define it. Because are they coming at it from a scientific perspective? Are they coming at it from a spiritual perspective? So if they're coming at it from a scientific perspective, then that person might be looking at scans of the brain. They're going to be challenging their assumptions. They're going to be like creating models. They're going to be having like different ways of measuring it, versus if someone is coming at it from more of a spiritual aspect, then maybe their proof, I guess, or their definition is going to include more of an experiential or a subjective experience, whereas the scientific might be more of an objective exploration of that. So I just think that when we talk about mindfulness, and when anyone is talking about mindfulness, one thing that I think, like moving forward, that I kind of took away from this course is to ask that person how they're defining it and like where they're coming from, because all of that is really going to inform the rest of what's said and help like understand kind of like which frame of mind that they're coming from. And, you know, and then obviously there's also like room for overlap, and it's not just one or the other, but there are ways to include both aspects and have both in the conversation. So yeah, so I'll end with that. And so now we will open it up to questions, comments from anyone who's read, or not read, but anyone who's watched the videos, or anyone who has anything that they want to add to the conversation. Joseph, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, Taylor. Thank you for presenting this evening. One of the questions is I kind of got a lot of the feeling that it was very closely related to the Stoic principles, specifically in the idea of managing our desires and not being caught up on this hedonic treadmill. Is that a theme going to be like, is that the same type of theme or feeling that you had gotten from this course as well?
You're talking about like specifically from the Demystifying Mindfulness course?
Yes. Yeah, because I got desires as like managing our desires and what makes us happy. And he talked a little bit about how we live in a consumer-based society and how we need to manage that. And that's the relationship between us and the West and the East, I was assuming that he was talking about.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot. I'm not an expert on Stoicism by any means, but I do think that there's a lot of overlap. There's also a lot of differences. But yeah, I think that I know like the Stoics are very, or like one of the Stoic, like the dichotomy of control, one of the tenets, I guess you could say, is, and for those who aren't familiar, it's the dichotomy of control is accepting the things that you cannot change and then taking action to change the things you can. And I think that awareness comes, that awareness of like the things you can change and the things you cannot change really comes from a mindfulness practice. And that's not necessarily like a Buddhist mindfulness practice, but it just comes from like an intention. And I think that in this course specifically, he touches on like the consumerism and materialism, but that's kind of like one of many topics that are touched on and discussed. So yeah. So it's one of many.
Thank you.
Jim, you can go ahead.
Yeah, it's really a comment. The whole discussion of the Buddha and some of the preconceptions kind of really resonated with me because I've studied Buddhism a little bit, and I find myself challenged. And the type of Buddhism was Tibetan Buddhism, and there's a lot of kind of extra layers in there, around spirituality and so it made me wonder, how much of this do I have to embrace, to be effective? There's also this kind of the specter, if you will, of maybe I should say specter, but the goal of enlightenment seems to be kind of the epitome. And so being a competitive person, it looks like, well, I need to be closer and closer to enlightenment. If I don't feel like I'm moving towards enlightenment, I must be doing something wrong. But I also do yoga, and for a little while in practicing yoga, I thought, well, I have to keep advancing. I have to keep doing more complicated postures and poses and have deeper stretches. And if I'm not advancing, I'm doing something wrong. And then I came to a realization that, no, actually, I can just do yoga that feels good to my body and keeps me flexible and strong, but I don't have to keep advancing. I don't have to be competing with anybody. And so I kind of adopted the same idea around meditation that, no, I can meditate however way that makes sense for me, and I don't have to necessarily be on this ladder towards some imaginary goal to feel like I'm doing it well, right? And so, and I think so for me, those are some of the aspects of the monk that have represented a little bit of challenges for me, and how I've managed to overcome them, I guess, or not make them problems for myself. I don't know if anybody can relate to that.
Thanks, Jim. Next up is Justin. Justin, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks. Thanks, Taylor, for hosting. The one thing, just quickly, I wanted to mention is if you haven't started the course, the artwork is awesome. The archetypes, they've got a hippie, a scientist, a ninja, a Buddha, and a zombie. So whenever you have a ninja and a zombie in the same thing, it's just, I don't know, that's cool to me. But the one thing, I can't remember which archetype it was, but the one thing that hit me was I always struggle with mindfulness and like living in the moment. I've got like a conflict or dichotomy of living in the moment, but my instinct is to vigorously plan ahead and, you know, look to the future and make sure I have plans and think of all of the things that could go wrong. And, you know, that's just, it's a really strong instinct within me. And so when I saw the title, Demystifying Mindfulness, I thought it might help. And it seems to me in the first, I've started the first lesson or the module, first module. And I think, I can't remember which archetype, but I'm pretty sure the instructor touched upon that. So I'm really looking forward to exploring that. The thing that at least I struggle with, you know, and I have started meditation and yoga and just being in the moment, but my mind is just so strong on wanting to chart out the future. And that's just a struggle that I have. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Justin. Next is Zeno. Zeno, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for putting this on. I didn't know about this course, but I did enroll, and I find it very interesting. So the way I interpret the problems is slightly different. I see it more as issues that should be discussed in this course, and not necessarily taking immediately a point of view on it or a stand on it. So like the Orientalism, can you do mindfulness really only in a certain kind of society that is organized in a certain way, that has certain cultural preferences? So it's more that these three problems raise problems around mindfulness, around the monk idea, and not necessarily immediately kind of take a point of view that no, it's for Westerners, or it's secular or not secular, because maybe it is not secular. At this moment in the course, I feel these are problems, issues to be discussed in the course, but although you may in the body language of your instructor see he has a certain kind of point of view around these problems, I think from an educational point of view, these are just issues being raised that we need to become aware of, and that there's not necessarily already an answer that the course gives. And maybe at some point the course will never give an answer, like the secularism. Do you need to have like a light that you meditate with? What could that possibly be, religiously speaking? If you are like a Baptist, or so that's kind of maybe a slight difference that I felt with you, Taylor, that I wouldn't say that these are answers to certain issues, but they're problems to be discussed.
Yeah, I think you were spot on with that, and that there are definitely issues to be discussed, and that and that they're he pitches them as problems, but you know, also they're for some people it's a positive thing, and I think you said that very well. Next is Laura. Laura, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm coming from a different perspective, almost feeling like it's a commercial perspective. I came to mindfulness through some therapy with a psychologist, and it was just a place that we would go when we would feel a certain tension or out of control. And it was some peaceful place that we found where we could take our mind to anytime necessary. And unfortunately, we didn't go very far in this because she was pregnant and had a baby, and things ended at that point. So I've been using that, and it's been very helpful to me. And that's as far as I got, but I'm interested in the concept of mindfulness. And so this is very interesting and gives me some idea where to look, but it had nothing to do with Buddha, religion, Buddhism, meditating. You know, like I said, it's sort of like commercial. Here's a quick fix kind of thing, and use mindfulness. And so, is that okay? Is that a cheap trick, sort of, or is what I'm doing kind of useful in terms of mindfulness? Or should it not even be called mindfulness? I don't know.
So I think that, yeah, I think Justin's actually speaking about this in the chat as well, but that about how one's mindfulness practice should be meaningful to that person. And if your practice looks different from another person's practice or another person's definition, or your meditation practice, that, you know, we're all here doing this to find something that works for us, and that for every person that could look wildly different.
Okay, thanks.
MP, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So I know that you can't see me, but I'm here and I've been to other meetups as well. And I'm glad that Laura brought up psychology, because I'm actually a psychologist. And I also do come from an Eastern background that does integrate Buddhism as well. And so it's interesting, you know, when I hear about people trying to define it, I don't think it's as exotic as people may think it is here in the West. We have, regardless, I mean, I think that mindfulness can be spiritual. I think that it can be psychological, and I think that it can be philosophical. I don't think that it only belongs to one rubric. And it's how you use it and if it gives meaning to you, as you had said, basically, Taylor. So as a psychologist, you know, I try to demystify this and simplify it. And I tell people, listen, you know, you don't have to be meditating on top of a mountain 6 hours a day, every day, and work towards enlightenment to improve your quality of life and to rid unnecessary suffering. This can be a few minutes. This can be a few minutes a day, several times a day. So, I do have that bias because obviously, as I had said, you know, because of my profession, I have that professional bias. So to me, it's really about making wiser choices, and yes, being in the moment, but also being able to step back and connect the dots of different moments to learn and to evolve. And enlightenment may be on the menu, and it may not be. I don't think it's in the Western menu, at least not recently. So, you know, it really is, to me, about changing your relationship with your feelings, with your body, and with how you handle your life. And that's how I say it. And it doesn't have to be this being in an altar, you know, wearing saffron and you know, and all this and that. I mean, I've seen that, and I've seen people who are not very evolved, and I've seen people not really engage in mindfulness in a very formal way and be very evolved. So, you know, and we've talked about it and how it looks like in different faiths, contemplative prayer in Christianity, the Kabbalah and Judaism, Sufism. So, you know, I just want to put it out there that it may not be as exotic or as mystical as people may make it out to be. And all that symbolism does have its place, but I don't think it has to be fixed to that. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, MP. Next is Brian Park.
Yeah, I mean, you can read what I said. The semantics surrounding problems, issues, the human condition is interesting to me. What makes an issue an issue? What makes a problem? Or is it just part of the human condition?
Is that just like a rhetorical question? Or do you have like an idea about that yourself?
Well, I mean, I can pretend I'm a butterfly if there's no negative consequences to that. I don't know. It's just, how do you know a problem is a problem?
Right. And I think I think that's exactly it. Like, what makes a problem, and that what we're trying to, or one of the things that we're trying to achieve in mindfulness, or one of the things that we can take to our practice, is the recognition that our experiences or our problems or our issues are our thinking, and kind of like the thinking that surrounds it. So for example, if you get, you know, if something bad happens in your life, we think that those things are bad because of the narrative that we have that surrounds that thing. So we think that like losing a job is bad because, you know, we have a loss of income, a loss of status, you know, the list goes on. But really, could that thing actually, you know, in the future, then maybe we can look back at it and see it as a positive thing. And that experience in itself didn't change, right? But it's like our perspective on it did, and like time changed and like other things changed, but like that experience itself didn't change. And I think, to comment, I think it's a great question, and like we could, you know, have a whole meetup on this, but is that just part of the human condition? I think the human condition is what we bring to that, and the human condition is kind of like us labeling it as good and bad instead of just labeling it, you know, as is, you know, as like that is happening. So I would say that the human condition is yeah, the labeling that comes with that.
Yeah, I think it's important to, there's a famous saying, under the aspect of eternity, it's like subspecie aeteratus or something like that. And having a long-term view can definitely help you filter out those problems. What is a problem, or is it just part of the human condition?
Mm-hmm. That was great. Thanks for that, Brian. Next, we'll have Sanjay.
Yeah, I wanted to add a comment. So people are talking about mindfulness and meditation interchangeably, and there is overlap. There's strong overlap, but they're not the same thing. Meditation is broader than just mindfulness. Mindfulness is a more recent type of meditation that's taken on. So, and both are good. Both are very useful and powerful techniques. But I just want to make sure that people recognize that they're not the same thing. Also, what Brian just mentioned, he talked about, you know, what makes a problem. So I don't see meditation as a tool that's used to necessarily solve problems. It can be used that way, but it doesn't have to be. And typically, For people who've been meditating for a while, it's not anymore about solving specific problems. It's a tool, it's a skill set that you develop, and it's mostly, I mean, it can be used to remove negativity or problematic thoughts or emotions that you have. But for people who don't have those, the few people who are like that, they can use meditation to basically strengthen their mind and to grow their mind. So it's still a very effective and powerful tool.
Thank you, Sanjay. Next, we'll have Zeno.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on what people have been saying, that everybody can decide for themselves what mindfulness is for them. And so at this point in the course, I feel that's like jumping ahead. Maybe of some form of community and learning from others, being part of a tradition is central to mindfulness. We couldn't all kind of end up with our own unique mindfulness. It requires some level of surrender to a tradition or a group. I know in our Western culture, we're not fond of that idea. We are like self-sufficient individuals and we decide for ourselves. But at this point in the course, I feel it's too early to kind of say that we can all kind of make up our own mindfulness. Maybe there are aspects of mindfulness that only can be embraced by embracing, letting go of that ego and surrendering to, I wouldn't say a guru, but certainly like a tradition. Yeah, so that's my comment.
Thanks, Zeno. Jim, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to what Zena was saying. With respect to where we are in the course and what's been laid out in the course, some of these ideas around preconceptions are really just to make us aware of what some of our own biases might be. Things that maybe have been attractors for us or detractors around the ideas of mindfulness and meditation. And the kind of the main instructor, he comes right out and says essentially, we may not answer the question, what is mindfulness, in this class? And but they will present many dimensions of it, right? And so the student comes to a conclusion through that process, and we haven't seen the whole process yet. So at this point, they're basically just saying, here's the landscape, and be aware of some of the biases that you might come to this class with, so that as you encounter some of these ideas, you don't let those biases kind of block your appreciation of those concepts. That's kind of the way I interpreted it. And I think they've done a really good job talking about some of those preconceptions at this point.
Joseph, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Actually, I had a couple questions, but there was one that was maybe, well, the one in the chapter about the problem of trappings. But I would like to ask one about, they said mindfulness makes you more rational. Like, what does he mean by that? That was something that was kind of confusing to me, because he also talked about subjective forms of knowledge, in the course as well. So that kind of confused me, like how you have these subjective forms of knowledge and then you have rationality as one of the benefits of mindfulness. But I know that's kind of highly abstract. But I don't know, when somebody says something, I have different ideas about rationalness, what's rational, what's not. So in terms of mindfulness, what's rational?
I would say that, and this would just be my experience, but I would say that mindfulness has made me more rational in the sense that I'm less reactive. So I think it also depends on, in this context, how are you defining rationalism? But I would say that maybe irrational could be kind of just making, flippant decisions or without a lot of thought or intention. And I think that mindfulness makes us more aware, more patient, more open, and more capable, I think, of not being so reactive, and therefore tapping into something else other than our what do I want to say, like our nature, our not human condition, but yeah, I guess into kind of like our human nature, the fact that like at the end of the day we're animals.
That totally clears it up for me, actually. Thank you so much, because that links managing desire and rational behavior really nicely, which was actually kind of my first question. That drew the connection very clearly for me, so thank you.
So Joseph, was that in the section kind of around the scientist? I don't remember exactly where that was.
No, that was towards the, that was under construct mindfulness, like where he was going over wait a minute, was that over? I might be. Yeah, I mean, it was at the end. It was in the last video where he had mentioned it.
Okay.
So
either the zombie or the hippie.
it was, yeah, it was, no, I think it was in the summary, actually. So.
Oh, in the summary.
Yeah, so he talked about rational, thinking as being one of the benefits of, well, if I took better notes, then maybe I would be able to tell you, but.
So I'll drop a suggestion, and this is for everybody. If you like to read rather than watch videos, there's at the end of module 1, there's a PDF file summary document that is almost a word for word transcript of a lot of the videos in prose form. And so that might be a good place to search for the word rational and see where you
it was under construct mindfulness when he was talking about benefits and how it leads to better awareness, attention, transformation, and adaptation. So yes, so it was in that section. But prior to that, he had mentioned subjective forms of knowledge and the idea of knowledge. And I was just like, okay, how do you have subjective forms of knowledge and then you have something that's rational? But the link between desire actually makes it a lot more clear for me.
Okay.
Okay, so next we'll move into the meditation. And today we'll actually be doing one of the meditations that was in the meditation lab from this week's course. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and then I'll just click play and we can all follow that if you'd like to. So Jim, just start shaking your head no if you can't hear this, okay?
Meditation 4, breath and body. Coming now to sit. Making yourself comfortable on a stool or a cushion or a chair. And if sitting on a chair, coming away from the back of the chair so that your spine can be self-supporting and your back and neck and head are in line. Erect but not stiff. The shoulders can be dropped and relaxed so that your posture embodies a sense of dignity, a sense of taking a stand, of being awake. And letting your eyes close if that feels comfortable to you, or lowering your gaze. And coming now to focus on your breathing, focusing on the breath moving down in the abdomen. Noticing the sensations of each in-breath and each out-breath. No right way to feel, just this breath coming in, just this breath going out. And there's no need to control the breath in any way, allowing it to breathe itself. From time to time, you may notice that the mind wanders. And when this happens, just acknowledging that this is what minds do, so it's not a problem, not a mistake. Taking this opportunity to notice that the mind has wandered. You have already woken up. You're aware. And this is what the practice is about, seeing the patterns that take us away from the present moment. So when you notice the mind has wandered, taking a few moments to notice where it had gone, then gently escorting the attention back to the breath, allowing the breath to anchor you back in the present moment. So if the mind wanders many, many times, bringing it back just as many times, beginning over and over again with the next in-breath or the next out-breath. Each in-breath a new beginning. Each out-breath a letting go, a letting be. And using the stretches of silence to carry on this work by yourself. Checking in from time to time to see where your mind is, and checking in with your posture to see if it is as you intended it to be. Now, at a certain point, deliberately expanding the focus of your awareness to the whole body, as if your whole body was breathing. So as well as the sensations of breathing, you're also aware of all the other sensations that are present in your body as you sit here. The contact with a chair or stool or cushion, feet on the floor, other sensations from the surface of the skin and from inside the body. Sometimes focusing right into particular sensations, sometimes zooming out and holding the whole body in awareness. It's not unusual when sitting for a while in this way for intense sensations or discomfort to arise in your body. And if this happens, you have a choice about how to respond. You could intentionally shift your posture, noticing the intention to move, the movement itself, and any after effects of the movement. Or you could choose to stay still and to bring your awareness right up to or into the area of intensity, perhaps inviting the breath to breathe into that region of the body, to explore what sensations are here in this moment. Not trying to make anything different from how you find it, but simply exploring with openness and curiosity. What is this? And then if it stops pulling for your attention, returning the focus back to the whole body sitting here, just as it is right now. And as this meditation comes to an end, reminding yourself that the deep stillness we seek does not arise because the world is still or the mind is quiet. Stillness is nourished when we allow things to be just as they are for now, in this moment, moment by moment, and breath by breath.
Okay, so next we'll move into takeaways. So I'll just go around, and as I see people on my screen, I'll just say your name and you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and and each person can share for a minute on their takeaways from tonight or any of the readings. And if you don't want to share, just type it in the chat and let me know, and we will skip you. So first up is G-Phone 2.
Hi. Hi. Yeah. So yeah, I joined late, but I did go through the module 1 for this course. I'm pretty excited. Actually, I really like what I thought. I think at the beginning a little bit boring. It's a little bit long because I was trying to multitasking to listen to it, and I have to listen like several times to really know what it's talking about. It's different characters, and I think to me, what I really like the best is actually in the end. One is exercise. I did one with the Buddhist guy. I really like that. Another one is the interview. I think 2 of the professors about one is used to be a Buddhist monk, and the other one, I think the professor at British, I think. And I really like their interview. Somehow there's a lot of content in their interview. It gave me much deeper understanding. So especially they mentioned how meditation really helped with depression. I don't have depression, but I think I'm really against medicine in many ways. I think Western medicine is really not see things holistically. It's like bandage way to solve problems. So I think meditation is more fundamentally to create well-being of people, which is much needed than just short-term fix with medicine. So I really like to learn that. So I'm looking forward to do the rest of the modular for the exercise, and I'm very excited for this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Marco.
Yeah, I went through most of the course, and I definitely, like, if anyone hasn't done the 40-minute body scan, like, I kind of recommend that. Like, I found it like really relaxing and helpful, and like when I was done with it, like some parts of my like body, like I guess like some like pressure released or something. But yeah, it was really helpful. I recommend it, and that's it.
Thanks, Marco. Next we have Mike Magical, and then MP. Okay, we'll move on to MP. Sometimes Mike has microphone issues. So MP, can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Okay. Yeah, that meditation was great. The mindfulness. I found myself, I think, in the midst of it being distracted, and then, and then at one point I remember I opened my eyes. And so I was like, oh, what's this distraction about? I think it just had to do with some heavy emotional stuff that's been going on recently. And then when I opened my eyes and I saw people with their eyes closed and still engaging, I thought, oh, we're still in this. And I realized that there was a part of me that found it to be eerie, and I noticed some discomfort with the silence. So that was a good indicator of something to me at the moment. And so I was able to really get back into my body, and I really, really liked the part where he said, now, imagine your whole body breathing, not just the diaphragmatic muscles. He didn't say all that. And that was just, I would like to continue with that personally on my own, because that can really help me. I have a lot of some physical pain, so I think that can allow me to work through it with less resistance. So thanks.
Next is Brian Park, and then Justin.
Yeah, I really appreciate the part of the misconception of the Buddha and how he's always had this image of sitting around, not doing anything. That's inspirational for me. I've tried to be a positive force by those in my immediate surroundings, but I should probably get out more and try to be more a member of the community. It's seemingly difficult to have a positive impact more broadly. But I find that inspirational, so I thank you for that.
Thanks, Brian. Justin, and then Laura.
So I almost finished module 1. I guess I didn't look at the videos at the very bottom. I think there's 4 or 5 videos at the bottom. But based on the intro so far, I didn't multitask. I actually watched the videos very carefully, so I was able to focus on them, thank goodness. But based on the introduction, I'm really looking forward to the course. I'm doing a lot of readings on, just for personal reasons, like Jungian stuff, and on just Buddhism readings and books, and some other spirituality texts. And I thought this would be good because, again, the whole demystifying mindfulness, it's such a catchy title. And also, and also I did want to say, I tried the short body scan, so the female voice last night, and I did awfully. I got really antsy and I couldn't sit still. It was really bad. I don't know what happened, but I think I entered into it with, my middle child, he just really was pushing my buttons last night. And so right before I started the body scan, that was going on. So anyway, I had an awful time, so I have to try it again. Thanks.
Thanks, Justin. We'll do Laura, followed by Will.
Okay, I'm not involved in the course, but I'd like to ask mindfulness as a therapy. What was I going to say? How do you feel about that as a psychological therapy? And second to that, how do you find a therapist who engages in that specifically?
Right. So, Laura, so right now we're just going to do 1 minute takeaways, and then after this, we're going to split up into breakout rooms.
Okay.
And so you can ask your question there.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. So next is Will. Okay. Moving on to Benito.
Yeah, hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you just give me... Yeah, hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah, if you can skip me today, please. I've been having problems with the website, so I didn't read or listen to all that much.
Okay, no problem. So next we'll do Dave, followed by Joseph, and then Jim.
Thanks again, Taylor. Looks like it's going to be a great course. I did the first 2 videos, and I think I saw the sales pitch to the university, but didn't get organized to do the readings. But can I suggest maybe you give us, especially the first few weeks, kind of an expectation about what we should be reading and maybe what exercise we should be doing to get us on track, especially since there's 2 parts to every week. I'm afraid I'm going to get a week off. And I suggest maybe announce that kind of stuff kind of in the middle of the evening, because a lot of people are dropping off before the end. But anyway, thanks again. It looks like it's going to be an interesting experience.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So just to give, to build off that, because that was a good lead. So the way we'll organize the course is that we as the group will explore each week of the course across 2 weeks. So we'll have part 1 and part 2 for each week of the course. So today it was part 1 of week 1, and then next week we'll do part 2 of week 1, of which the presenter for next week, which is Jim, will just present on another kind of like nugget of information or an idea or a concept from the week. So Joseph, go ahead.
Just really quickly on that. So do the labs, they said it takes a week, or to spend a week on the labs. So we should be spending this week on the labs this week on the course, like, right? That's meant.
Right, because the labs are the second half, right?
Okay.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, so those you can just spend like, if you want to like stay like exactly kind of like aligned with what we're doing here, then yeah, you would just stay on the labs for like 2 actual real world weeks, because we'll be doing, we'll be talking about each week or a week from the course over 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. So cool. All right. My takeaways is one, thank you again for presenting. I really appreciated that. And I'm starting to see the Western Eastern culture and the problem of Orientalism. And then it also has really helped me with understanding archetypes a little bit better, and Jungian theory. It's simplified it to a certain degree. And I know you read from Jung's book a couple weeks ago, so that it kind of clicked. And those are 2 main takeaways for now. I mean, I have a few others, but.
Great, thanks, Joseph. And last but not least, Jim.
Yeah, so my main takeaway is really that I'm just really excited about the course. I think there's going to be a lot of richness in the coming weeks, and the first week of material was already pretty dense. So I'm glad we're taking it each week into 2 parts, and to then follow up answering some people's questions about our structure. If you're behind in the sense that you haven't had a chance to finish or even start module 1, as Taylor said, we're going to be covering more of it next week, and I may in fact cover some of the first half of module 1 that Taylor didn't get to. Like, I really kind of excited about the ninja preconceptions. I'll talk a little bit about that, and summarize some of the interviews that we heard a little bit about today as well. With respect to the labs, I mean, this particular module's labs are just the 4 meditations. But one of the things that's missing from our walkthrough of the course is some of the community activities. So, like when I was going through and trying to do everything, I'd taken the tests and everything that's there. When you click on some of the options in the left panel, it's a discussion with other people in the class. Well, there's no other people in the class right now because we're starting a little bit early, I think, from the original intended start time. So we're not synced up with the other students, if you will. We are, in fact, our own student body, so this is our discussion. Okay, so that'll save you a little bit of time relative to the normal time commitment. And so for the meditation labs, rather than trying to do them all in one day, you can spread them out over 4 days, and that's your week, essentially. But again, if you feel like you're behind schedule, you're not really. Just watch the videos, do some of the meditations over the next week. And like I said earlier, if you would prefer not to watch the videos, you can also just go to that document at the end of module 1, which is a really nice text summary of all of the concepts in module 1. So that's a great way. You can even start there if you want. You don't necessarily have to do it in linear order. So anyway, I just wanted to share those things.
Excuse me. I feel like I'm walking in, I feel like I'm coming in the middle of something, this course and all of it. Can you tell me what the course is, where you find it? If I want to get involved in it, just, I have no, I can keep listening to you guys, and maybe learn something, but I think it would be more fun if I was reading the material and was able to partake in it.
Just go to the Meetup page for this meeting, and there's a link in there to the Coursera.com or whatever it is, starting page for the course.
Okay. Thanks. I guess I could have figured that out probably.
Yeah.
And with that, I think that's all of our takeaways for tonight. So I'll pass it off to Shrikant.